Welcome to another episode of Agent versus Lender. And today we have Joel Zeev with us. He's a good friend of mine. I've known Joe for, 5 or 6 years probably. And it's really interesting how we met. I know that a lot of agents don't like to do door knocking, but that's actually how Joel and I met. He actually knocked on my door. My house was for sale, it was an expired listing, and Joel knocked on my door. And it's really funny that most of the time, if you've ever sold a home or if you've ever done door knocking, you get a lot of doors slammed in your face. And I almost did the same thing to Joel because as you have an expired listing, you have lots of people come in and lots of realtors that are trying to get hold of you. And I don't think Joel's ever heard this story, so this is new to him. Anyway, he came to my door and wanted to list my home, or said, hey, I know you haven't expired. And I kind of like, okay. So I just thought, you know what? Okay, I'm just going to listen to Joel for a second and see what he has different. I said, so Joel, why are you different? And it's really funny, man, he was prepared. He had an entire presentation. He knew some trigger points. He was totally prepared. And what was interesting is he went into marketing that he does differently than everybody else. And being a marketing kind of guy myself, that intrigued me. And so he got in the door and he ended up listing and selling my house, which several people haven't been able to do before because it was probably the biggest and most expensive house in that area. But he sold it. And so I was really grateful. And ever since then, we've been friends. And so I appreciate it. So I'm grateful to you, Joel, and I'm happy to have you on my podcast today.
Oh, I appreciate the invite, Ron.
Awesome.
So do you want to tell them how we actually know one of the same guys from Michigan?
Well, I don't care. Wait, you can. Go ahead. Tell them how. Scotty and I, Scotty Hudspeth and I. So I've known Scotty for longer than I've known Joel. I've known Scott Hudspeth for probably a dozen plus years.
And we work with him in Michigan because Ann and I moved from Michigan.
Joel, you were a realtor, right?
In Michigan, no, I was flipping houses.
Oh, and you worked with Scotty there as a loan officer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, many times.
So it's really funny. What a small world. Yeah. So Scott, if you know anything about Scott Hudspeth and the Marketing Animals, that's my coaching group, and so I've coached with Scotty for quite a while. In fact, since we're going to go there, I had talked to Scott probably not too long ago. It was a couple years ago, and I was telling him what I want to do, and Scott said, Rod, you've been telling me the same story for 10 years. When are you going to do it? And I kind of got ticked off. I bet. It's kind of like, what are you saying? And I sat there for just a minute and it got real quiet and I started to laugh. I said, you're right. I have been saying this for a long time. And so for the last 2 years, I've been coaching with them and our business has increased 800% over the last 2 years. So
Sweet.
So, so since you brought up Scotty, kudos to Scotty and the Marketing Animals. They're an awesome group. And what a small world because you know him very well too. So, yeah. Cool. Anyway, sweet. So now that we talked about that, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got in the how you got in the real estate industry, and tell us a little bit about you.
Okay. Well, Ann and I moved from Michigan. I grew up in Michigan. Ann grew up in New Jersey. So 9 years ago, just about to the day, we moved here. And so what we were doing in Michigan, we were flipping houses like crazy. From 2002 to date, we've bought and sold personally over 170 houses.
So you've lived the going through the buying process a lot.
And the selling process.
Yeah,
we've hired over 100 different realtors. Because the deal was, we weren't realtors. You can't. Our model was created to allow realtors to go and find us a deal. So keep in mind, it's a totally different market, right?
Right.
Buyer market, declining market. And so our deal was, Ron, if you were a realtor, And we were the flipper. We said, hey, this is what we're looking for. You bring us the deal, we will buy it, and then when we are ready to put it back in the market, you get the listing.
That's an awesome model.
It worked really well, except we worked with 100 different agents
Right.
and tried to get them to fit into our model for how we work things, and that was kind of painful. But
I can imagine, yeah.
But there was a window of opportunity there that we took advantage of, and that started to dry up in 2010, 2011, and we made the decision, well, we need to start looking at something different to do. What are we going to do, and where do we want to do it? And we decided to move to Utah. So when we moved here, we literally knew two people. We knew a guy that I met at a real estate seminar, and we knew his realtor, because we came out here on a reconnaissance trip, and we were mainly actually looking down in Park City. Spent over a week down there, had dinner with this guy and his wife 2 days before we left, and they told us about this little valley that we ended up moving into. And they said,
Which, by the way, is a beautiful valley. I just went water skiing up on Pineview today. Yeah.
I love it up there.
Yeah, it's awesome.
If we didn't find that valley, I don't think we'd be in Utah.
Yeah, it's beautiful there.
But we had dinner with him and his wife, and he said, oh, I didn't know you're serious about moving here. You need to go check out the Ogden Valley. Hooked us up with his realtor. We spent 4 hours with her, and we were making moving plans on our trip back home the next day. So we were convinced that this was the place to be. So we moved here. We knew two people, both already in the business, so there goes those two clients, right? And we had to start from zero. No center of influence, no clients, no family, no friends, no nothing. And how do you build a real estate business from that?
Well, that was my question, is because if, this is going to be a really good episode for those people that are starting brand new or that have moved here, because it is really tough to do. So I don't know if we were planning on talking about that, but I really want to delve into that, about what you did and how you built your business from literally not knowing anybody. Because most people that start the business have a center of influence. They have an SOI in the area. You didn't have that.
We had nothing.
That's amazing.
What we did do is, when we got our real estate licenses, we ended up connecting with Keller Williams, with the owner of the office here in Ogden, and he was our coach for the first couple of years. And he drilled into us, because we pretty much knew the concept of marketing, about having to have a USP, a unique selling proposition, something that set you apart. And Matt really took the time and helped us. He didn't tell us this is what you need to do, but he got us thinking, what's going to set you apart? What are you going to do differently? And we built our whole marketing and our message out of that. So like when I knocked on your door and you started asking, what are you going to do differently? Well, of course I had the answers, because it's all internalized. It's all part of exactly what our business model is built for. It was built around expireds, and it was built around having a message that said, this is what your experience is going to be like with us compared to what you just went through.
It's pretty funny that you say that, because I remember, as you're talking about that, I remember you saying, this is probably what you've seen. And I said, yes, that's exactly what I've seen. Mm-hmm. And you said, but this is what we do, and this is why it's going to be different. And I said, and I asked you specifically, what marketing are you going to do differently? And you had the answers. It was just like, man, this guy's like on top of his game. I didn't know if you were new. I didn't care, which is really important for those people listening, because it doesn't matter if you're new. But if you are prepared, and if you have a plan, just like you did, you prepared a plan and you executed that plan, and it sold me. And I've been at that point, I've been in the the business for 20 years. I've been in 25 now.
Yeah, and how many realtors did you have that you would have been comfortable calling and saying, "Come list my house"?
Well, honestly, I hope they're not listening. But I did. I had 2 different agents list my house, and they couldn't get it sold.
Right.
And you listed it, and it sold. And sure, I know people are going to say there was a different market, but it wasn't really that different. We weren't in a big cycle at that time. It was just, there was a different in the way the presentation. You had drone videos, you had walkthrough videos, and at that time, 5 or 6 years ago, there wasn't a lot of that video marketing. There wasn't a lot of drone videos. Man, you were a pioneer in that. And that was just, so you had not only drone videos, but you had shots from the sky, and you could see the neighborhood. It was freaking amazing, just quite honestly. Yeah, so it was fun to watch.
Okay, good, thanks.
Yeah. So, I think we've talked about this before. Is that I appreciate you coming here and sharing some of your skills and some of your background and some of your knowledge, because not everybody is willing to do that. I've just learned over time that the more we give, the more that seems to come back. And so having that abundance of just the ability to share, quite honestly, it's just because I'm willing to share, because I know it's going to come back to me at some point. But I also know, and I hope those of you that are listening aren't one of these people, but most of us don't implement it. And that's really a shame, because on these podcasts, and it doesn't matter what you're doing, whether you're listening to a podcast, whether you're buying a course, and it's really funny that most people that buy a course, still most of them don't implement.
Right.
So don't listen to this podcast and just leave it, let it go. Listen to what Joel has done, and implement it in your life and in your business too. And what he said was, and he internalized it. That makes a difference. So when somebody asks you what's your USP, you don't have to think about it, man. It's just right there. Mm-hmm. So tell us, Joel, what is your USP?
Well, it's all based on results. So at a high level, it's our from a seller's point of view, our sellers are earning over 4% more than the average agent. And then you say, well, Joel,
how do you, that's what I would say. Is that, what do you mean I can earn 4% more? How do I do that?
Right. Well, and I track that on the MLS. Our results versus the average agent and what they're doing. When you compare the ratio of sales price to original list price. So it kind of gets their attention. What are you doing differently? Well, what did your last agent do in the case of expireds? Or what are the other agents doing? And they're all basically doing the same thing. They're putting a sign in the yard, they're taking photos. If you're lucky, they'll hire a professional photographer. Yeah, I've seen some pretty pitiful pictures on the MLS. So sign pictures, put it on the MLS, and they're done. And I never throw an agent under the bus for doing that, because that's what the industry teaches us to do. They don't teach us to do anything different. So because of all of the houses that we flip personally, and we hired over 100 agents, we realized we could sell those houses, and this is part of my pitch when I'm talking to a seller. We realized that we could sell those houses for more if there was a better effort put into the marketing side. Sure. So we would hire these agents, we'd pay them their commission, they do those 3 things, and then we do our own marketing. And gradually over time, that marketing that we did expanded. And that expanded plan, which is now a grand total of 57 different points, gets implemented for all of our sellers. And that's why they're earning over 4% more, in combination with our ability to negotiate. Because you don't buy and sell 170 properties yourself without running out of money, unless you become a pretty good negotiator. Yeah, that's awesome. So that's my pitch, because that fit exactly what we were doing. Is that going to work for anybody listening to this? Maybe, well, probably not, unless you've done that many. But the point is you gotta figure out what's special about what you're doing. Saying things like, well, I'll work hard, or I would love to help you.
Yeah.
I've heard, I'd love to work with you. I'd love to help you so many times. I want to shoot the person that's saying it, because it paints, at least when I hear it, I don't hear anything that says, what's in it for me?
Which is so important.
Yeah. Is at whatever you structure for your USP, the message has to be what's in it for the person that you're talking to. Every time I pick up the phone, before I pick up the phone, I start thinking about what am I going to offer this person. Matt Green, our coach, hammered that in. He called it a MOFR, which stands for make an offer for immediate response. So, like, I want to get your email address so I can put you on my drip campaign.
If you said that to me, I'd say, well, I'm not going to give him my email.
Right. Well,
I have to make you an offer.
Sure.
So why would you want to? I have to offer you something that has value to you, so that you give me something. If I want to sit down and meet with you in person, I need to make you an offer that says this is what's in it for you if you sit down and meet with me.
So can you give an example?
Sure, you're thinking about listing and selling your house sometime in the next 6 months. Would you like some advice for what to do to get your house ready?
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Well, let me come over and I'll walk through the house with you and give you some ideas.
What would you say if they said, well, I don't want you to just come over and try and list my house because I'm not ready?
I won't even bring any paperwork if you're not ready. I'm just coming to give you some ideas on what to do to get it ready.
So,
And then during the conversation, I'm going to plant little seeds that are all based on painting a picture of the value that I'm going to provide when you get to the point and you hire me.
So since we mentioned Scotty has told me that that's called results. He calls it results in advance. And so if you're providing something of value to somebody, there's almost an expectation, not necessarily from my point. So so Joel, if you're providing value to me, I almost feel an obligation to give you something back.
Oh, sure.
Does that, and so that's why that results in advance, or whatever your coach called it, is you're creating that sense of Joel's a pretty cool dude. He's giving me stuff for free. Mm-hmm. I probably ought to list with him because he's done so much for me. Right. So
I've gone to actual listing interviews and prepared so well for it and sent them things in advance that I've had several people say, you've done, because we'll put a blog post out with a draft description of how for the words that we'll use to market the property. Ian calls them pretty words. Beats just MLS remarks,
Right. Yeah.
I need the pretty words by tomorrow. I'm sending that email out. So I've gone to those to those listing appointments, knowing that they're interviewing other agents, and they've said to me, "You've done more to prepare and try to get my business than my last agent did over the course of 6 months."
That's the result, exactly the results in advance. So when you're giving something of value to somebody, they feel almost an obligation to give something back.
I'll take my drone with me, and I'll get there early, and I'll take a couple pictures, do a quick little edit on my phone before I go in. Say, hey, this is just a sample of what the photos might look like when you hire me.
I love it. Love it. That's awesome. That's cool. So, okay, so we talked about your USP a little bit. Mm-hmm. What other things have you done to set yourself apart?
Well, I don't know if this is a plug for Haas Pratt, but Matt Green said, go check out Pratt's training. I don't know what he offers anymore because this was, 8-9 years ago. But what we really got out of that was the focus was on, it was the same kind of focus that Matt was pounding into us. What's your message? What's going to set you apart? And he got us thinking about, again, with expireds, because that was an easier target when we got started. And by the way, you said, you don't like door knocking. Nobody likes door knocking. I didn't like door knocking either. We had no choice. We had no business.
So it's one of the ways that if you don't have an SOI, it's just like, do something, implement something.
Right. And the other thing that I discovered, because I started making phone calls, and that was a complete waste of time, because there are teams of agents that are making hundreds of phone calls every day. And we just got dropped into that same category, and I didn't want that to happen. But when I started door knocking, I realized that very few people were actually out there door knocking, because you get a lot less numbers in, but when you're face to face with somebody, I don't think I've ever had anybody slam the door in my face.
Yeah,
Because it's easy to slam a phone down, but it's
totally.
it's like social media. Social media people complain about. I think about, would you have really said that to that person if you were in the same room across from each other? No way, because we don't behave that way.
Right.
So you're going to be treated fine. You're going to get a lot of no's. But for the yeses, it was definitely worth the time.
Yeah. So it's expired is kind of an anomaly to me. I mean, it's one of those things that most people hate to do, but people that do it consistently get results from it.
Sure. Yeah, and that's probably true for anything that you choose to target.
Good point. Yeah, good point. If you're doing something, do it consistently.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's awesome.
So what we learned from Haas was, I'm putting myself in the shoes of the seller, and thinking about that experience that you just went through, and so you think about the objections that are going to be in that seller's mind. So one of them, and I wrote down a few notes here. My last realtor, and we kind of touched on this, my last realtor didn't do anything besides put it on the MLS. Well, what's your response to that? Well, my sellers are getting 4% more, 57-point marketing plan, blah, blah, blah. I don't want to be locked into a listing agreement for 3 months, 6 months, 8 months, whatever the period of time is. My listing agreement is easy exit. You can cancel at any time for any reason.
That is so different in today's market. I mean, I know that a lot of people will talk about. I've seen it on multiple forums and social media about, hey, this guy wants a different agent, and
What do I do?
yeah, what do I do? And
Let him go.
yeah, that's what I would say too. It's just like totally let them go.
Yeah.
But because you're just building bad wills. There's no goodwill in it.
Sure.
And I've seen so many people advise that say, well, they're in a listing agreement, hold them to it. It's just like, don't. Yeah, I'm just thinking to myself. So good for you. I think you're one of the few that would allow that. So good for you.
Well, we had our the last house that we flipped before we got our real estate licenses was in Utah, and the guy that we hired, I was not happy after 2 months. And I had him on the phone when I was telling him, I said, this is what you said you were going to do. I don't see you doing any of it. And his response was, well, I guess you're just stuck with me for another 4 months, aren't you?
Oh.
And I looked at Ann and I said, and we were both working on our real estate licenses and knew, that it was imminent that we were going to have them done. And I said, when we have clients, no one is ever going to feel like I feel right now.
Good for you.
Period. If they want out, we're letting them out.
Yeah, good for you. That, you know what, and a lot of times that's because you understand how it feels being on that side of the fence, and so good for you for implementing that. That's commendable.
There you go. The other thing that we hear often is my last agent in the beginning was great, and then it's like they disappeared. The house didn't sell right away, and I never heard from them. or I couldn't get a hold of them, or they take days to get back with me. So we have a communication guarantee. It says if we don't touch base with you at least once a week, cancel the listing right on the spot. So that takes care of that objection and that bad experience that you had.
Yeah, and I can attest that you guys do that. You hold true to that.
Yeah.
Which is a hard thing to do, especially if you have, and so for those that are on this podcast, whether you're watching or whether you're listening to it, Joel and Ann are no slouch. They're at the top. I think you're at the top and probably in your office, if not in this entire area. So they're no slouch. They do a lot of listings, and if they can communicate with their buyers or their sellers on a weekly basis, so can you.
For sure. Part of it's technology. So we have an accountability report. It says, hey, here's the major parts of our marketing. We got this from Scotty Hutzman too, off of one of his podcasts. So we create a spreadsheet and we update it once a month. And we say, here's all the things we said we were going to do. Here's the number of hits on each one. Because I set an expectation up front. Mm-hmm. It's not mine. It's the you selling your house, how much it sells for, and when it sells is not a factor of solely of what I do. It's what we do for marketing. It's what you do, what you allow for showings, right?
Right.
And the condition of the house when people go through.
Sure.
And it's the market. So I'm not going to sit here and say, hey, I promise I'm going to sell it for you in 3 weeks, when there's 3 factors and I can only control one.
Sure.
But what I am going to do is you're going to get feedback so you know about the other 2. So we have that accountability report that shows what we're doing, and then we have a feedback document. So every call, text, email, phone call that we get from a realtor or a buyer goes into a document in the cloud, and we share a link with our sellers. So, we had 3 showings yesterday. What did they say? Well, if we have the answer, it's in that document because it's the only place it goes. Mm-hmm. We've got a listing up at the top of Powder Mountain, super slow market.
So if you guys don't know where Powder Mountain is, it's just
Paradise.
It's because
Don't
tell anybody. It's right near where Joel lives. It's a ski resort and he doesn't want me to say this, but it is like the local place to go, because everybody else goes over the mountain over to Snow Basin or down to Salt Lake, and this Powder Mountain, it's like an amazing place to go. So Joel doesn't want me to tell you that because it's awesome, and it's world class, and it's just kind of tucked away, so it's cool. Anyway, go ahead.
So, but that she responded to our Diana expired to our campaign, and honestly, I don't think we're getting that many more showings than what she had with her first agent. But with her first agent, she had no clue what the market was telling her. Mm-hmm. She said, "Well, I think I had like 6 showings in 6 months, and really didn't get any feedback." If you look at that document that we've got out there now, so I think we've had it listed like for 4.5 months. It's like 6-7 pages long.
Yeah, because I think you said that your document also shows you track your hits on your websites, and I think there's multiple places on the internet that you have these, and you're able to document how many people have seen the home via social media or via your websites. So you can tell people, hey, look, people are looking at this house. This is how many views we have. And if it hasn't sold, well, it's probably one of, several of these reasons. Right. So you can give them feedback as to what people are saying and who's seeing that house and how many times. And so it's really good feedback for you as the agent and for the sellers as well. And you provide that to the seller.
Oh yeah, and we get to the point where the listing's going to expire. It's real simple for them to look at it and say, well, obviously they're doing stuff. Look at the number of people that have gone through it, that have called, text, and emailed. I didn't get a fraction of this from my last agent.
Right.
And they may have. They just didn't know it because the agent never took the time to give them any feedback.
And that's key. Is if somebody is not getting feedback, they don't know really what you're doing. So that's if you're listening to this and if you were busy, rewind that part because that was really good.
A lot of this is just getting inside the seller's head. I'm not going to pay X percent commission, whatever the percent is that they say. Well, great, I've got a menu of commission that starts at 0 and it goes up to 7 or 6 or 7 or 8 or whatever number you want to make. When we sit down to interview, we'll go over that menu.
Perfect.
0 sounds great. Come on over, man.
Yeah. What do I get for 0?
Yeah.
0?
No, well, if it's 0, it's you find the buyer. Which leads me to the last point, which is I'm going to sell it myself. That's a really smart idea. Why don't we both try to sell it at the same time? I have this smart seller program. We both market it at the same time, at the same price, and if you find the buyer, I go away. There's no commission.
I don't know of any other agent that's willing to do that. No offense to any other agents that's out there, and maybe it's just because I don't know. So I'm the selling person right now. Mm-hmm. I just never heard that.
Well, and we just had one where that's exactly what the guy said, and I said, give me House of Roy. I said, give me 7 days. I said, first you put it for sale by owner. Wait, when you get any offers, just hold on to it, call me, and then give me 7 days to beat it after adding in the commission. And we had, well, he actually got two FSBO offers, and we got 20 offers. Needless to say, we beat the FSBOs.
I'm sure you did.
And he's like, oh, well, that worked. Like, he's like, what's the catch? I'm like, there isn't one. So we did a 7-day listing, and I think we did like a 10-day listing, and it was under contract in 8 days.
Yeah, cool.
So it built time in there to get the bidding war going. And I even called his FSBOs, his buyers, mm-hmm. and said, hey, we're in a multiple offer situation. Here's the written notice. Do you want to come up? So they had the opportunity to come up higher and compete with the other ones if they wanted to.
Sure.
And we still beat them out.
Yeah.
Adding the commission in.
Well, that's a really great plug for a really good agent, because I just don't know I've never heard that strategy before. So that's pretty awesome. That's cool. So I know that you've done a few other things too. So, mm-hmm. And I should have had a copy of the book right here, because I know because I have one. I have actually several of them in my. Yeah.
I didn't bring one in.
Yeah, you didn't bring one. So I know you wrote a book. So tell us about your book.
The book, since this is going to other lenders and agents, mm-hmm. The book is a really long sales letter. A really long sales letter.
Sure.
You've read it.
Yeah.
And it reads like a sales letter in that it's got the big headings and the subjects, so people can skip around and what a sales letter looks like.
Yeah, but it also provides some information in there for somebody that's trying to sell a home. It's not just like it's not just a sales letter. So there is some valuable information in there.
But basically, what I did is I went through my listing presentation, some of the flyers and handouts that I give when I sit down for listings, my script when I'm going through the listing presentation. I went through all of that and wrote the book based off of that. And with the idea of taking in the attitude of that I do, we wanted to provide value. Mm-hmm. The idea came to me because you can actually, there are companies, there's people out there that have written generic books for realtors, mm-hmm. and you give them, have you seen these?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, you give them your photo and 1 or 2 lines about you, and they put you on the cover, which is really tacky, by the way.
Yeah.
It's like, I am not putting my face, I mean, that looks like nobody's going to pick that up.
Right.
So we have a nice aerial photo on the front of ours. Where was I going with that?
So you could put your picture on the back of the book, might be okay, but not the front, because people, if somebody knows you, maybe they'll pick it up, but people aren't going to pick it up based on the cover.
That's just screaming sales letter right there.
Yeah, totally.
But I mean but so these books are pre-written. You can't change any of the text. Somebody's already written it. It's super generic. It has nothing to do about what you do differently than everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
Put your picture on there, run off copies, $8 a piece, and boom, you've got a book. So that's where I got the idea from.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started reading some of them. I'm like, I don't do that. That's a horrible message. Like, this is not, there is no way I'm doing this. And Ian's like, why don't we just write our own? I'm like, that's a great idea. And of course it took, 3 times longer than I thought it would take, and finding, the editor and figuring out how to publish and print it and stuff. But it's been good, and it's instant credibility.
Yeah,
That's part of our expired campaign. That's the first piece that goes out. It used to be, hey, your house didn't sell. You and or your agent suck. That was basically the message.
Sure, yeah.
And it was
a little more tactful.
Yeah, exactly. So we changed it, to hey, if you decide to put your house back on the market, here's a book that's going to give you lots of ideas. If you can interview agents, start with chapter 12 that tells you how to interview agents, so you don't go through what you just went through last time.
Yeah, that's what I said. There's some meat in the book, but it's also, I'm assuming that, so if you're ever thinking of writing a book, Joel's is a good one to get, because you can take that model of what he's done and use that for what you do differently. So I'd recommend going and getting his book.
Okay. Yeah, if you just, it's not like we got a real common last name, so if you just go out on Amazon and search for Zeev, you're going to find it. And I think the electronic version is 99 cents.
Yeah, and I think it's spelled it's spelled Zieve.
Right.
So, and you've done something else. So I've got 2 dogs, and you've done something else to brand yourself that is very different as well. So tell us about that.
We always give a certain percentage of our income to charity. We've been doing that, basically since we've been married, because Ian likes to give money away. So that's mostly her department. And our dogs, we're dog people, we don't have any kids, so our dogs have always been from rescues, and part of our donation budget goes to no-kill shelters. And again, this idea came from our coach, Matt Green. He says, why don't you just make that part of your branding and start telling people about that, and build a relationship with other pet lovers. So 4% of our profits on each transaction is going to go to a no-kill shelter that you, our client, selects.
That's cool.
Has that made a difference? I have no clue. But we were giving the money away anyway, so we just built that in as part of our brand. So, and it was fun because we do our team picture with me and Ann and the 2 dogs.
Yeah, that is cool. So if there's anybody that is looking for a house or is selling a home and they have a dog, they can totally they can relate to this, because
it's called what, affinity marketing?
Yeah,
is
it is.
What you would call that?
Yeah, I think that's affinity marketing. So when somebody is likes a brand or likes something, they can relate to you better, because it's like, oh, Joel and Ann, they're totally dog people. I'm a dog person. It's just like all of a sudden you have this instant bond, and
Right.
yeah, it's hard to break those. So it's a great strategy.
Thanks.
So the hard part though is the money. There's money put into marketing, but the real money comes from follow-up.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just putting stuff out there. So tell us how you follow up with people. So if you've door knocked, or if you've met with somebody, or somebody's picked up your book, or they've been to your website, or they go, oh, they're dog people, you know. So you've got named, you've got people in your pipeline, but how do you follow up? Because that's where the money is.
Right. Well, I mean, there's probably a gazillion websites for CRM, client resource management. Is that what that stands for?
Yeah, customer relation management, or there's probably all kinds, but CRM, most people know that a CRM is just a way to keep track of your clients and keep track of appointments and keep track of what you've talked. So in my CRM, I keep track of, or somebody on my team will put a note in there so we know when there's phone calls made. We track emails, we track phone calls, we track everything. So it's a great way to know what's happening with your client.
Yep, and same with us. So what's always at the top of my mind, besides when I'm making a call, and we talked about what am I going to offer to get these people to move to the next step, is I'm thinking, okay, what's next? So before we hang up, I'm going to say, okay, well, it sounds like we should touch base in a couple weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And you nod your head and say yes, and then I put my follow-up task in. And it's just a habit that's been with us forever, because we were taught very early on in our sales careers that if it's all about the follow-up. If you're not going to follow up, you're not going to have the business. You can't expect people to just call you and say, hey, I'm ready. Although that occasionally does happen for people that I've purposely not followed up on because it's just like, this is a waste of time.
Yeah.
And they'll still call you back.
Yeah.
But the other parts of that CRM is, that's, at least for us, ours handles the drip campaigns too, text and emails.
And it's automated.
It's all automated.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you build the campaigns in advance. So I get a lead, they disappear, I put them on the campaign, and then I decide I'm not following up with a phone call anymore. Or even inside the campaign, you can make yourself a task. Okay, we're 4 months into this, make Joel a task to go and follow up and see where they're at.
Yeah.
But if there is one word to answer your question, it's follow up.
Yeah.
Although I guess that's 2 words.
So what's the best CRM?
Oh, who knows? We started with the one that we got for free with Keller Williams, which was Market Later. And then at the end of 2016, we converted to Line Desk. The problem with converting is getting all your leads over and all of the notes, because a lot of them will have the ability to export and import. But we've got, we put a note in for, anything. It's just crazy. That's just a habit that we've always been in. It's come in real handy because my memory is really poor. If you're a lead and I talk to you in the morning and then you call me back in the evening, there's a really good chance that I won't remember your name or what we talked about.
Right.
That's just the way my brain works. A lot of people, it's just right at the top of their head. Like, I don't know how you do that.
I think there's a reason for that, is because you're a busy agent. It's not like you've talked to 1 or 2 people throughout the day. As a lender, and my team, we'll talk to. I'm not going to say hundreds of people a day, but we talk to a lot of people each day, and trying to keep all those conversations straight it's almost impossible.
Oh, I can't even imagine.
It's almost impossible. So a CRM. So the best CRM, I'll tell you what the best CRM is. The one that you'll use.
There you go.
That's
a great answer. You can do it with pen and paper. You can do it with a spreadsheet.
I was going to say,
do it
my
with a Word
CRM,
document.
I did that on spreadsheets for a long time. It's just like that was my CRM for a long time.
Yeah, put it in a Word document and go in your calendar and put calendar appointments for people that you need to call on certain days.
You don't have to be that fancy. Yeah. It's just like but you do have to follow up. Without the follow up, you just nothing's gonna happen.
Right.
So systems and processes. I know we all have to have a system in place to make things work. I'm I don't know, is there anything in particular that you use as far as, I know you use the CRM. Is there other systems or processes that you use that helps you keep things on task?
I think, well, at a high level, Ann and I don't like, how do we don't like to reinvent the wheel.
Me neither.
So it's like, we figured out, okay, so there's a certain things have to be done. This is just an example, for closing for a seller. What are those things? Goes in an SOP, standard operating procedure.
Right.
And we just run through it like a checklist. And that way, every time we close, we don't forget anything.
Yeah.
We don't forget to tell, if it's a buyer, we don't forget to tell them that they need to get wiring instructions so that they can actually close and not default.
Yeah.
When we built our flipping business had one set of SOPs, and our sales business has a completely different set because it's all transactional based.
Sure.
Some of them are marketing related. Some of them are processes related to getting it listing. I have a virtual assistant, so there's things that me, and Troy do to get a listing live and roll out this whole 57-point plan. Can you imagine having to rethink how to do that for every listing?
Yeah, there's no, you just can't.
You can't do it. So we document everything, and Troy has learned, because he's heard me say it enough times. If he asks me a question, it's like, give me the link to the SOP because it's all in the cloud, and tell me what it says. And if it's not addressed, give me your ideas, and let's go and update the SOP because they're living documents. Because things change.
Yeah.
So it's just that general philosophy is think once, think really hard about it once through the whole process, write it down, kind of like a recipe, like you were baking cookies, and then you're done.
Yeah.
Go and write the next one, or just go and use it, next time when it's ready to use.
Yeah, we use a system called Trello, and anytime we have whether it's a purchase or whether it's a refinance, the system that we use, it's a little bit, the SOP is a little bit different, but there's a lot of it that's the same. But there's tasks and there's check marks that my team has to follow. Okay. And when we find a fault in it, we update that. Just like you said, if it's not in the SOP and there's something like, oh, this happened, let's fix that so that it doesn't happen again. And so the checklist is pretty darn long. And but we thought hard of, and it reminds me of that movie. It's about McDonald's. And when we were going through, and I know that we talked about that really briefly, but when we were going through what was going to be on our list, we talked about that movie in our office. We talked about that movie about Roy Kroc and about the people before Roy Kroc who actually came up with the system that McDonald's followed. And so we kept going through that, and it took us months. Literally, it took us months, even though we've been in the business for 20 years, to go through and document everything that happens. And even then, there was things, something would happen in a file, and we go, that shouldn't happen, and so we update that document. Right. So it's really important to think through a system so that when something comes up, you're ready you're ready to move forward and to solve that problem without really even thinking about it.
Right. And it relieves a lot of stress, and it actually helps to eliminate a lot of the emotion too. Because sometimes when you're emotional and something blows up, it's like, what do we do now? I have to figure out how to solve the problem, and then I have to go and implement it. You just created 3 times as much work.
Yeah.
So having it done can eliminate that, because I believe as agents, it's a very emotional process for the buyer and the seller.
Totally.
As agents, it's our job to help reduce that, not add to it. We've worked with a lot of agents that add to the emotion and the drama, and it's like, you're driving me crazy. I don't know what, how your client's going to respond based on what you're how you're responding, but let's back up a little bit and try to get
I've
rid of
seen
some
that
of this
too.
emotion.
Yeah. I've totally seen that.
Well, Matt, this has been a lot. We've gone through a lot. This has actually been really good for anybody that's looking for ideas on how to build a business and how to set yourself apart. Thanks so much for sharing with us. It's been really eye-opening, and hopefully there's going to be people that will get a lot out of this.
Well, thanks for the opportunity. I hope people do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if somebody wants to get hold of you, Joel, what's the best way for them to get hold of either you or Ann?
Probably our website,
Okay.
northernutahhometeam.com.
Okay.
There are 2 H's there between Utah and home.
HOME, so yeah.
northernutahhometeam.com is our website.
You guys ought to at least go check out their website, because it is, they do have a lot on there, and you can check out some of their drone videos, and so it is pretty cool. So you guys ought to check that out. So we'll wrap this one up. Again, thanks, Joel, for being with us today. If you need to get hold of Taylor and I, you can reach us at 801-628-7667. And also, if you have time, go give us an honest review on our podcast, and we appreciate those reviews. And we'll catch you next time on Agent versus Lender.